everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Shankly Gates podcast. I'm David. Joining me tonight, as ever, Kieran, Dan Club, and a warm welcome to Mark Baker, who's joining us for the first time. We're adding plenty of fresh faces into the squad, which is what Klopp needs to do in the summer. But anyway, let's get back to that in a minute. We've got loads coming up for you tonight. Obviously, we're going to talk about the Reds finally picking up a league win. We'll look ahead to the Chelsea game. And of course, we'll have plenty more debate aside from that. There's been lots to talk about replacing Firmino this summer, and that's going to be our hot topic of the night. First thing I want to ask all of you is anyone getting fed up of not being able to get a haircut? I am absolutely done with not being able to get a haircut. Honestly. Like, it's not too bad on here because you can sort of like move it, but the back, I'm not even going to show you. It's horrendous.
Mine's an epic as well, fella.
I feel like you're one of them, no, Kieran. You let yours grow, so you look normal. I just look
yeah, I'm a
mine
scruff,
just is horrendous. I've been trying to tidy the sides up, and it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So next week you might see me make an appearance with a number 4 all over. I think is coming. So yeah, let's start with Sheffield United. Obviously, the first piece of news that came from the game was kind of expected with Alisson not playing. Tragic news, of course, about his dad passing away, and very sad and unexpected. But if we look at it from a football point of view, Kieran, it was obviously, a big miss, or so we thought at the start of the game with Adrian being in goal. But what were your thoughts when you seen Alisson missing from the squad?
Well, I think we all knew he was going to be missing from the squad based on obviously the tragic news that we learned in the week. So obviously, when you see Adrian's name on the team sheet, especially with, very inexperienced centre-back partnership, you fear the worst. But I mean, we did keep the clean sheet, so he was in the right places at the right times. Adrian, he was there to make the saves. I don't think the commentators were onto it because the amount of times he got called Alisson during the game was ridiculous. I mean, that really wound me up last night. But, what can I say? He was in the right place where we needed him. Clean sheet. I mean, that's the first clean sheet since United at home, I think. So another big tick, another big positive. And you keep a clean sheet, you've only got to score once to win the game. So, it's just really, really good to be back to these back to winning ways again.
Absolutely, yeah, we did indeed. And Dan, in terms of the game itself, do you think Liverpool were better, or do you think Sheffield United are just quite a poor team?
I think a combination of both. I don't think we were fantastic by any stretch of the imagination. I think we showed a bit more attacking endeavour. I think if you look at certain periods of the game, we had quite a lot of players forward. Trent Alexander-Arnold in particular was higher than normal, and that's saying something given that he starts quite high usually, but he was definitely a lot higher from the start. And yeah, we were okay. We weren't flamboyant. We weren't brilliant. Sheffield United were a poor side. They created half chances. Physically, they were quite a match for us. But I thought Phillips and Kabak did okay at times. Adrian terrified me. I'm not sure he was in the right place all the time. That mix-up with Kabak wasn't fantastic.
Yeah.
But he did okay. And listen, I don't really care how we played. We won the game, and that's all we needed at this point. I couldn't have cared less how it came, to be honest. So yeah, we won.
Yeah, I think he might have been watching last week's podcast, Ozan Kabak, as he didn't have very nice things to say about him last week, but there you go. Anyway, it's interesting you mentioned. I was going to come to you, Mark, about the sort of tactical shift that we've seen from Liverpool. Curtis Jones's average position was the highest on the pitch out of all the players that played, and we were. I know you weren't here last week, Mark, but we were calling for a bit of a change last week in a bit more of a number 10 role. Were you excited to see Curtis Jones a bit more advanced and how he played?
Yeah, I think Dave, obviously Curtis Jones has come through some of the youth ranks playing higher, hasn't he? Off the left hand side or as a 10. So it's definitely a role he can take up. And I think the thinking behind it for Liverpool would be that they've come up against many sides of a similar kind of ability to Sheffield United over recent weeks, albeit Sheffield United that are probably the worst of them versions. And Liverpool have really struggled to create chances. And the final decision-making, midfield players getting in the right areas and being able to service the front players has been lacking, really. And when Liverpool have got big chances in games, they haven't taken them. And I think that was the key to the game, really. That when the opportunity came for Curtis Jones within the 18-yard box, he was able to execute it, and Liverpool could then take the lead. But game pretty much played out a lot of the way many games have been, in the sense that Liverpool were given the ball by the opposition. I think one thing you would say is Sheffield United weren't able to block off Liverpool's attacking lanes, and Liverpool were able to get in much more advantageous areas, really, because Sheffield United are just that bit poorer in their organisation and their actual technical ability. So, but yeah, I felt he was played an excellent game, and I think in general, I think he's going to be a really good player, Curtis Jones. You can see he's got that little bit of ability, and I think technically outstanding, good in tight areas. And I believe he's got a lot more to show in the attacking third as well than he has shown so far. Obviously, fresh to the level, but you always feel as though going forward he will contribute in terms of, influencing the outcome of games from that midfield area, and obviously did this time.
Yeah, I think it's interesting the point you make there about him playing in those positions when he was younger. Obviously played off the left wing, didn't he, for the under-23s most recently. He's impressed me the last couple of games. I'll be honest, I'm not his biggest fan, if I'm completely honest with you. But he is starting to impress me more and more. And I feel like he keeps getting substituted just because Klopp's just testing his attitude. He just wants to see, is he going to pull a Ross Barkley and launch his shinnies at the bench, or is he going to just take it? And you can kind of see in his face he's not best pleased about getting took off, which is fine. There's a way to deal with that, and at the moment he's dealing with it perfectly. Dan, would you agree that he was? Well, I know you agree, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Was he man of the match yesterday?
Yeah, he was for me. Mainly based on what Mark just touched upon in terms of him wanting to be the player to make things happen. He was, like you say, the most advanced out of a lot of them. And it's been the case for a few weeks, in my opinion, that he's looked like the one to really spark something in us. When that's been lacking, if we're honest, from across the front line, really. And in terms of what he can offer going forwards, I think, playing for Klopp and playing for the Liverpool side, you have to have some sort of defensive acumen. And I think he's learnt that really well in the past 6-8 months. And that might have just held back his attacking influence a little bit. So if we can get, players back alongside him, like your Fabinhos and your Hendersons, then they'd probably be allowed to do a lot more in terms of going forwards. But solely based on last night, definitely man of the match. In a pretty, average performance, if I'm dead honest. But yeah, he was the pick for me.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was an okay performance. It was one of those you've come to expect from Liverpool, to sort of grind out a win. It wasn't spectacular by any stretch of the imagination, but it got the job done. It was 3 points. It was much needed. Kieran, I want to ask you about Thiago. A few people have been giving him a little bit of stick on social media and saying he didn't really play that well. What did you make of his performance?
Again, I think like most of the other, the rest of the team, I think again it was okay. He did an all right job in there. I mean, as we've said on previous weeks in the podcast, that Thiago coming to the team, you obviously line up with Wijnaldum and Jones yesterday. It's probably not close to the two that you'd have him in mind, him starting in a game with. You'd obviously have Fabinho and Henderson in that. So, I mean, you have to probably take that into account. I mean, obviously, you paid the money for him, and he's a winner. He's been one thing, so you expect him to make an impact. But I think you have to cut him some slack, because especially Klopp, this is not the team they envisaged to have this season with all the injuries and defensive problems we've had. So, I mean, I'm prepared, to give him a pass on this, and hopefully we'll see the Thiago we want to see, when the players are back towards the end of the season, maybe, or if next season.
Yeah, that's the big thing for me with Thiago is the players around him, definitely. And he has been a bit iffy at times, and you think he hasn't really showed his best, but I think his best is certainly yet to come. He's by no means a bad signing at all, so we'll see how that goes. Let's move on to Chelsea. Let's cover that. Obviously, this result, I think the weekend's results really for Liverpool have worked out really well. Dan, haven't they? Manchester United have dropped points, West Ham have dropped points. We're not even looking at Manchester City, because what's the point? It's league over in that sense. But everyone's dropped points, Chelsea as well. And obviously Liverpool pick up 3. So this becomes a huge game now, doesn't it, in the race for the top 4?
Yeah, it's massive. Like you say, the weekend couldn't have worked out much better, which made last night's victory, by hook or by crook, all the more important, really. And obviously, Everton played tonight, so if they drop points, that'd be even better again, because they're on our tails, believe it or not. But yeah, no, Thursday's huge. Thursday's massive. If we can, it sounds really negative, and as you know, I'm the last person to be negative, but avoiding defeat's actually massive, especially considering what's gone before at Anfield of late. If we turn up at Anfield and get beat again, all of a sudden, the top four looks again a million miles away after what's been a really good weekend. So, avoiding defeat's probably most important. But listen, if we go and win it, then you'd almost put us back as favourites for making the top four, because I've got a sneaky suspicion Leicester are going to fall away. They did it last season. They've just lost Harvey Barnes, which obviously gut him. They went out the Europa League the other night, and things just seem to be unravelling a little bit there. So, they've got previous, like I say. So, there might be two spaces up for grabs when it looked like there might only be one.
Yeah, we spoke about this, didn't we, before the derby? And I said then that I didn't think Liverpool were going to make the top four. I think now if Chelsea, if we beat Chelsea and the way Leicester are going, and I'm not concerned about West Ham. I think Chelsea are probably nailed on for that fourth spot at the moment anyway, or certainly before the weekend's games. I think they're the problem. If we can beat them, I think you're right. Leicester look shaky. I didn't think they'd do it again, but it looks like they're going to do it again. Mark, in terms of this battle, then obviously you've got Thomas Tuchel, who's coming into this as quite fresh face, but he's coming up against a familiar, maybe not foe. They probably haven't faced off that much, but a fellow German in Jurgen Klopp. Very similar tactical styles. What are you expecting from this one?
Yeah, I think it's a really good appointment for Chelsea, Dave. You look at the top managers in the modern game now. It's all about the collective, both with and without the ball. You look at sort of Mourinho's sides these days, and they look so disconnected from back to front when they have the ball, unable to progress the ball through midfield. And it's almost that the team's split in half between the defensive side of the team and the attacking side, and he's unable to connect the two. With a manager like Tuchel, very much in the modern, you think of the greatest managers of the modern era, so you're thinking about obviously Klopp, Guardiola, very much into consistent repetition in terms of the defending and the attacking thirds. And I think Tuchel will bring that to Chelsea. You can see already there's a real collectiveness the way they go about things from a tactical point of view, and they'll be difficult to play against them. When you've got the quality of player that Chelsea have, if they're directed in the right way and organised in the right way, you always feel that it's going to be a difficult game and they're going to be there or thereabouts, because it is a very, very strong squad that he's got to work with. So I think a really difficult game, especially in the sense that teams know that Liverpool are vulnerable in that centre half position, and potentially the goalkeeper, although I think he'll play. But it's for me, Liverpool are going to play well enough between the two boxes in the run-in to have the opportunity to amass the points total that they would need. However, I think it'll very much be defined in how they are able to manage in the two boxes. They've struggled in terms of taking chances in the games of late. I don't think they've created massive chances. However, when they have at key moments in games, they haven't taken them. And then at the back line, whereas you used to have your Van Dijks, Matip, Gomez, physically strong, robust, athletic, have that acceleration. So they manage so many minimal situations that the opposition get against Liverpool. I think when you now look at the personnel in there and the difference in all aspects, really, that we've just talked about, and the vulnerability to either individualised set pieces or individualised moments in which they get opportunities in Liverpool's half, it's how they manage them, and whether Liverpool can do that well enough will be the key for me.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. I think we're going to come to certainly one of the boxes when we talk about Firmino. I think we've covered the other end more than enough in the last few weeks with the defenders, so I think we'll swerve that one this week because we did keep a clean sheet for once. Kieran, obviously, we're back at Anfield. It's usually a thing where you think, we're at home, we should be all right, but not at the minute, mate. Would you rather be away at Stamford Bridge at this point?
Just based on the recent form, probably, yeah. It's completely turned on its head since the start of the year. The start of the season, we were pretty much flawless at home and we couldn't buy a result away. And now, I don't know what's that. It's completely turned the New Year's come. It's completely flipped on its head. So, we are due a big result at home. I mean, the one thing I would say, obviously, with Tuchel coming in for Chelsea, he's got this side organised, in my opinion. So I think I'd be interested to see what he I think he'll play and try to be compact and see how other teams have played and got results at Anfield. But for me, this is a massive game for us. It literally the result of the Chelsea win, huge for them. Puts us a lot further away. But if we can go and win that, I have to agree. We have to be one of the favourites for the top four. And I mean, to be honest, when we talk about the others, like we talk about Leicester falling away. I mean, I'm still not convinced by Man United. I do think that second place is still for grabs. Mate, they have got a relatively decent point lead over us, but there's still a long way to go in the season. And we've still got to play them away as well. So I think there's still plenty for us to go for. I hope that we can come out the traps early again, and hopefully just take it to them. Just what we'd give for them, a massive 3 points and just a much needed result at Anfield.
Yeah, it is much needed. Certainly much needed. Let's wrap the Chelsea chat up then with predictions. Kieran, I'll stay with you. What are you going for?
Well, I mean, I'd be hard. Obviously, I'd love Liverpool to win, but if you're asking me in my head, the team that's lost, 4 on the bounce at home, I mean, you'd probably be saying best case scenario would be a draw. So, putting all that, if you ask me with my heart, I'd probably say, I'd probably go and try and shave a 2-1 home win, but with my head, I'll probably, and I'd probably take it. I'd probably say 1-1, Dave.
Okay, 1-1, Dan.
As ever,
I know it's going to be a really optimistic result. I can see
it is. You know what it is, and I'll explain why just dead briefly. At Liverpool, obviously, we won last night. That's great. We've got some players coming back this week. You're looking at Jota probably, Fabinho, Alisson, Milner played last night. Keita came on. So listen, it's not Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez, but it is players back, and it's much needed. Not only that, Chelsea are a lot more organised under Tuchel. Don't get me wrong, and they've been a lot better. Without Thiago Silva in that backline, I'm still not convinced by their centre halves. Rudiger, Christensen, and Zuma have all got serious errors in them, in my opinion. And I just think we can get at them. And I'm not convinced by that threesome at all, I'll be honest with you. So, yeah. And like Kieran touched on, we've got to get a result at Anfield, haven't we? We've got to. So, we'll do one more to the point. So, yeah, 2-0 for me. Liverpool, just think it's time. And Chelsea are better, but I'm still not convinced by them.
Mark?
Yeah, I think Liverpool have got to, for me, they've got to win the game. I think it's a massive game. I'm not convinced that they win it. I think there'll be issues in dealing with Chelsea's forward players, which will be a problem. But they are capable of winning it. I think a lot will depend on how Chelsea set up, and like as ever, if they're afforded space, Liverpool, in them final third areas, then they can hurt them. But I'm not very good at predictions. I might go a 1-1 draw in this one.
1 draw. I'm going to take a leaf out of Dan's book. I'm going to be optimistic. I think this is it. I think this is the win at Anfield that we needed. I think Chelsea have got a fantastic squad. I really do. And I think next season they'll probably be challenging for the title. Manager gets a summer under his belt, and if they don't go mad and spend all sorts of money again, I think they've got a really good squad. But that squad's not settled, and it's not gelled, and there's still areas that need ironing out. They were probably just getting settled with Lampard, and he's been sacked. And whether you think that's right or wrong, that's what happened. And now, I think the rest of the season, I think they're there for the taking. I do. I think they're there for the taking. So I'll say 3-0. I'll be optimistic.
Oh,
3-0.
You got good odds on that.
The Reds are back. Let's have it. Yeah, you see what happens is, Kieran, if I say 3-0 and bet on it, it won't happen. But if I say 3-0 and don't bet on it, it will happen. And then I'll be furious that I didn't put a bet on it. And I think at this point, I'd rather have the win than the money. So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, let's have it. Before we move on to look at our hot topic on Fulham, let's just have a little chat about one of the stranger situations that happened this weekend. We all seen Lee Mason and that absolutely crazy period of football that it was indescribable, to be honest. And Lewis Dunk went mental after the game, didn't he, in his post-match press conference, and probably rightly so. But let's just have a quick look at referees. We'll start with that decision, though, Mark. For you, what was going through your head when you seen it? What were you thinking? Was the referee right or wrong, or what's going through your head when you seen it?
Yeah, I only seen it after the fact, to be honest. So I was obviously viewing it, knowing sort of the information behind it, but it did seem a bizarre decision. I think it was almost as if the referee had realised the goalkeeper wasn't set, and then almost tried to engineer a way out of it by then blowing again. So it was a bit of a mess all around, wasn't it? And not a great look for the referees who have obviously taken a lot of stick this season. I mean, a lot of people have a lot of views on VAR. I'm not totally opposed to it, if I'm honest. I mean, I always believe there's two different ways to look at VAR. I mean, people normally clump them together, but there's the offside version of the VAR, and then there's the obvious decisions. So I think obviously people do not like sort of the VAR offside decisions, and you understand because some of them are so close that you think to yourself, "Oh my word!" when you get goals ruled out because of it. But it's difficult because I haven't heard anybody come up with a solution to the issue. And with regards to obviously the decision offsides, I mean, I probably have to say I'm still pro it being introduced into the game, because I just feel that the referees in this day and age, to ask them to keep up with such physical athletes over the course of a pitch and get the correct decisions, I just think is a difficult thing, and sometimes gets a bit lost in some of the, analysis of it overall. I think that people are very quick to always point it out when it's wrong and the VAR doesn't work. But sometimes when there is correct decisions, it almost gets glossed over, and you forget that probably if you took it away, there'd be times when you'd be thinking, "Oh my word, I wish it was here." So it's a bit of a toss up, really.
Yeah, Dan, what were your thoughts on Lee Mason's decision? And I think we've got to take into account the fact that Nuno Espirito Santo got fined 25 grand for saying he shouldn't be reffing in this league.
Enough, yeah.
And then he goes and does something like that. I mean, Nuno should probably get a refund, to be honest. That's my opinion. But what are you making of Lee Mason? And to be fair, the refereeing standard in general in the league?
Yeah, I was going to bring up the Nuno thing. I hope he kept the receipt because he was dead right, wasn't he? The Lee Mason one. Mark made the point well. I thought he's looking down, isn't he, when he blows the initial whistle? He has no idea what's going on ahead of him. I think he presumes the keeper's ready and the defenders are ready until he looks up, realises the keeper's basically stood in his post, and he's panicked. And by that point, it's too late because Dunks took the free kick. He did it to us last year, if you remember, as well, Lewis Dunk. So he's got previous. It's an abysmal decision. It's a farce. He's then decided he's disallowed it, and then he's give it, and then he's gone over and disallowed it. It's just a mess all round. But yeah, in terms of the referees in general, we haven't got long enough, if I'm honest. I agree with all Mark's points in terms of they've got a difficult job keeping up with these athletes, and we all wanted VAR in many ways when we finally got it, but from where I'm sitting, the refs are terrible. I'll be honest. 99 times out of 100, you watch a game and they produce poor decisions, whether they impact matches or not. They're not necessarily big decisions, but just in little free kicks through the game, and you think that's not a foul. They go off the player's reaction half the time. The standard's really poor, and I think I made the point on this podcast a few weeks ago that there was no English referees at the World Cup a few years ago, and we all complained and said why, and I think it's pretty obvious why now. They're really bad, and week in, week out, we're still discussing it. And VAR, all that is the ref watching the game basically somewhere else, and they're the ones that don't really know what they're doing. I honestly, I'm starting to believe, and I never really bought into it, but I think it's down to a bit of a lack of footballing knowledge, a lot of the decisions. I think if they had someone who knew a bit more about football and not just looked at it plain black and white in terms of officiating, it might be a different story, because so many of the fouls and things that happen, you just think, well, that's natural to happen in a game of football, but they give a free kick for it because they go off the law, if you like. And I think that's a genuine problem. They're a bit too officious and stuck in the roots. Whereas if they just looked at it from a football point of view, they'd probably let a lot more stuff go. But yeah, generally speaking, horrendous, in my opinion.
No, I'm with you, mate. To be honest, I am with you, and I'm going to come back to that point that you've made about football and knowledge very, very shortly, and ask you all another question. But Kieran, for you, mate, before we do move on, the Mason referee and standard, what's going through your mind?
It's embarrassing, isn't it? It's just, I mean, I don't know. I mean, Dan brings the point up. I was there last season, Brighton at home. Alisson's just been sent off. Martin Atkinson was the referee. Adrian's still setting the wall up, blows his whistle. Lewis Dunk puts it in the other corner. But, this time Atkinson said goal. So there's a complete lack of consistency. And he's trying to get out of it. He's blown the whistle for a second time before the ball's at, the back of the net. And it's just so frustrating. I mean, just referees in general, we're talking about it week in, week out. I mean, it's plain to see. It's not VAR's not the issue. It's the people in charge, the referees. I mean, there's another incident as well in the Chelsea Man United game, the Hudson-Odoi handball. I mean, for me, that's one of the more blatant handballs I've seen this season. That personally, I just couldn't believe that it was given as a penalty. But I won't go into Stuart Atwell's the referee. I won't go into him because I could be here all night, Dave. So no, we're talking about it again. It's just referees every week. They're simply not good enough.
Yeah, I think you know what, I look at that Manchester United one, and I think back in the day, that's not handball. You just play on. It's just incidental. This season, it's handball.
Yeah.
You can't change. I mean, obviously the purist, if you like, in me looks at that and goes, it's never handball. It's never. But you look at some of the decisions they've given this season, and I feel like Man United were harshly done by, not because I think it's handball, but just because of the other decisions that have been given. Dan, have you got something to say on that?
Yeah, you've really touched on it there in terms of the purist, and it alludes what I spoke about. It's all well and good, and Kieran's dead right in terms of based on decisions we've seen this season, and arguably the laws of the game right now, that's handball. But from a football fan's point of view, and people who love football, that can't be handball. You can't give a penalty for that. You know what I mean? They're both going away from goal. They're nowhere near the goal in terms of the penalty area, and nothing's happened. It's grazed his fingers. You can't give someone a free shot at goal from 12 yards for that. You know what I mean? It's just, it didn't get given, but if that gets given, the game's gone, saying comes into perspective, because that's not worthy of a penalty. But you are right in terms of that's been given before.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make it right, in my opinion,
I'm totally with you on that, mate. I am totally with you on that. As you say, it's not a penalty. Let's just be honest, it's not a penalty, but you've seen them given this season, and that's the apparent law. But allegedly, there's a meeting, IFAB, a meeting this week or next week or whenever to discuss clearing up the handball law. But they're not going to clear up the handball law. It's just going to get messier and messier, and it's going to get worse. I want to just come back to something you said there, Dan, about referees not having football and knowledge. There's been something put out there in the past that maybe ex-players should go and be referees. But obviously the amount of disrespect, if you like, that referees are shown on the pitch will probably prevent a lot of ex-players or people like that going into refereeing. So there was someone come up with an initiative this week that especially after Mike Dean was given death threats and things like that. And I dread to think what Lee Mason's getting at this moment in time. That referees should be clapped onto the pitch. I want to know what you think about this. I'll start with you, Mark. What are your thoughts on that? Would you be happy to see refs clapped onto the pitch?
No, I don't. I don't think that has to be the case. I mean, listen, it's difficult. Obviously, it's a professional, competitive environment, isn't it? And some of the ridiculousness, obviously, especially you see online towards some of the referees, is just it is awful, really. I mean, they're just human beings trying to do the best job that they possibly can, and if they're not up to it, then they've been put in that position through no fault of their own, or if they make decisions, because football's very tribal these days, isn't it? In terms of people thinking that there's agendas, but at the end of the day, these fellas just go on the field of play to try and make the best decisions they possibly can, and it never needs to go to that. But at the same time, I don't think that the players need to clap the officials onto the pitch either. I think it's just there can be respect shown without really having to go into that sort of protocol.
Okay, Dan, what are your thoughts on that one, mate?
Yeah, very similar. Like, I'm quite critical of referees, but like Mark touched upon there, they are just human beings trying to do a job. And a lot of my criticism is based on the fact that I don't think they're good enough for the job. It's not really based on anything personal, to be honest. And in terms of the abuse they get, horrendous. And you simply can't condone it. But what are we clapping them? If it's for respect, they need to be shown more respect, and that goes from players and outside arenas as well. But like, it comes back to like, why are we clapping them when they're not really great at what they do? Like, I get the respect point of thing, but if they were better at the job, which is what they're there for, then maybe there's an argument for it. But not right now, like, not when it's an absolute shambles like it currently is. We can't be, applauding them onto the field when they're not doing very well. Really, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, Kieran?
Yeah, like as the lads have said, I mean, at the minute, it does seem a little bit nonsensical to clap them on, especially the way they've been, the performances they've been putting in. Obviously, I condemn all, death threats, abuse, everything that you see these days. I mean, they are human beings. They are trying to do the best they can. We all know that. But I know I did see it in the week. I did a little, just shaking my head, thinking. I mean, something probably, something does need to happen. I'm just not sure that's, the type of thing. I mean, since obviously no crowds in grounds, I thought the referees would have found that as a welcome break. They could really just focus on refereeing for a whole game. But if anything, it just seems to have got a whole, the standards have just got a whole lot worse since there's been no crowds. So I do think something needs to be done. The abuse is scandalous. Death threats, absolutely not. But I'm not sure that clapping them onto the field is the best course of action.
Yeah, for me, I think the big thing for me is the referee's demeanour and the behaviour on the pitch. They're quite, times they can come across as quite smug and above you, and they look down the nose at people. And I think, Michael Oliver's one for me, who I just think is just, he just looks like a normal fella, and he just referees like a anyone would, like, he's not above them. And you see people like, again, death threats aren't right. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. It's absolutely not. But you see people like Mike Dean, and he loves the limelight, doesn't he? He's in, he's hiding the match ball from someone who scored a hat-trick, and he's giving it all that. And I just wonder whether they should change the behaviour. Although I think if anything's going to change, it's a grassroots problem for me. I think, it's been a while, but when I was involved in kids football and coaching teams, and you're seeing kids at the age of like under 7, under 8, and the parents are screaming at the referee. The referee's like a 17, 18-year-old kid just trying to make a bit of extra money, and it's like, give them a break. I think that's where it comes from. I think referees are given so much abuse down in grassroots that people just think it's acceptable. And like you say, you take the human nature, not nature, but you take the human out of it, and it's like, it's a referee. He's not a human. We can just give him as much abuse as we want. And I think that's the issue. I think it stems from grassroots Sunday league type of thing. But I do agree that the standard is well off. And I personally don't think clapping them on the pitch is the right thing to do. I think that's just for their ego, and I think they'll all love that. For me, they don't deserve it. If I'm honest, you know what? They probably haven't got egos, but that's just the way they come across. Some of them are quite egotistical and love it, and I just don't like the behaviour and the demeanour sometimes. So clapping for me is probably not the right thing to do. Let's move on to Fulham then. Let's look at Fulham. Back to Liverpool stuff now. Obviously, these are fighting for their lives, and they're picking up some decent results. They actually got a draw against Liverpool in the last game out. I can't remember the order I'm asking the question, so I'll just throw it at you, Dan, because I don't think you get the first one ever, for being on this little middle tile for me here. So what sort of game are we expecting from Fulham?
You know what? Like, we spoke, if Fulham have anything about them, which I think they do, by the way, they'd probably come and set up like teams have had success at Anfield, like your Brighton, your Burnley, and what have you. But the way they play, and the way they played in the first game at Craven Cottage, and since, they picked up some results recently, I've got a feeling they'll play football and they'll come and try and attack us, which is probably a little bit naive and probably won't serve them well. But that tends to be the way they play, and that suits us. So I'm probably more confident for that game than I would be if it was a Burnley or a Brighton, like I've mentioned, because they don't mind sitting in and soaking up pressure and what have you. Whereas Scott Parker seems to have a way he likes to his side to play football, and it's serving him quite well at the minute. So they'll pose a threat like they did in the game at Craven Cottage. Like I say, I just think them trying to play football is the best possible outcome for us, especially with the people back I mentioned before. So, yeah, obviously very confident for that one, really. I'll be honest with you. Yeah, really confident because they've got players that like to come and attack, and that's great news.
Yeah, that's a good point. Kieran, do you agree with that?
I suppose so. I mean, to be honest, it's just it's just home games against obviously we've got results against the bottom six sides this season. Now, obviously we beat Sheffield United, but they haven't really been good enough. I do agree with Dan Spur. I think Fulham will be a bit more expansive than like a Burnley or a Brighton would be. So hopefully we can use the space. You say manipulate the space and use that to create the chances. But I still think it'd be a difficult game. Fulham they've improved massively from where they were at the start of the season. I mean, defensively they were all over the place. They weren't, creating any chances, scoring any goals. So got to credit Scott Parker for that. I mean, you just said 6 weeks ago, Fulham absolutely no chance of staying up, and now they're only 3 points from safety. So massive credit to them. I think it all depends on the setup. I mean, if they do try and frustrate, I'm not sure they're able to, but we could find problems again, especially with our games coming thick and fast. We're not, the full Liverpool, coming out the blocks, pressing. So I think it's a difficult one to call. Obviously, I'd like to think it'd be a victory, but again, I just look at the previous record of the teams in the bottom six, and you never know what Liverpool are going to turn up. So I probably will be more positive on the day, but a bit more circumspect at the minute.
Okay, Mark. Dan says there that Fulham might come and play, and he thinks that's going to be a good thing for us. Do you think Fulham have got any choice when it comes? Because obviously, relegation is looming for them. I know they've done really well to close the gap on Newcastle, certainly, and it's wide open, to be fair. But do you think they've got to come out and play these games in that way to try and pick up as many points as they can?
No, I'd probably say that they'll adopt a similar approach to what's been a success for the majority of the teams who've been coming to Anfield of late and playing against Liverpool. So they'll sit compact. But I actually believe that they've got really some of the characteristics which could hurt Liverpool. You think that, there's been a lot of criticism of Liverpool, in terms of saying, it's been terrible, that kind of thing. But actually, when you look at the overall performances, as I say, between the boxes, Liverpool are pretty consistent in the fact that they're dominating the majority of the teams territorially. What they're not able to do is just be able to obviously take the opportunities when they come and then shut out the opposition in the few opportunities they get to get in Liverpool's half. Now, if you think about Fulham, and I must confess, I don't watch Fulham every single week, but one thing I do know is they're a physical team. They've got quite a bit of height in the side, so they're going to be a danger from single moments, which are going to be set pieces, which Liverpool have struggled with. And also, they've got players who, in isolated 1v1 scenarios, if the ball gets turned over quickly, can really expose Liverpool's players who are currently operating in the centre-half positions in terms of mobility. So I think that they'll set up like that, and they've certainly got them aspects to be able to hurt Liverpool. So I think it'll be important that Liverpool are able to get on the front foot early and take the opportunities that they will get at the right moments to try and strike up a lead. Otherwise, it could turn into a frustrating night, which again, then as the second half goes on, always relates to opposition having one or two opportunities against Liverpool at this moment in time because of the personnel Liverpool have in the back line. So, and the opposition know that as well. They know if they can stay in the game, that them chances will be there. So I pretty much see it as a quite difficult game, if I'm honest. As I say, I don't watch Fulham all the time, but I thought they were outstanding at Everton. Absolutely outstanding. I remember the first half against Liverpool as well. They should have been well cleared in terms of goals. So they've got enough ability in the team. And I just believe they have got some player profiles who could hurt Liverpool if Liverpool aren't at the best.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think, I think it would be beneficial for Liverpool for them to come out and play quite expansive and keep the ball. But they'll look at the likes of Brighton, who are a similar team, sense, who like to keep the ball and not dominate possession, but have plenty of it and work it forward. Brighton came and done a job on Liverpool. They adapted to the challenge, and I think Fulham might just do that as well. To be fair, they've probably, even though Liverpool have been relatively poor, let's say, they've probably earmarked this as one that they can say right off. We're probably not going to get any points here, so we don't really care. But that can be dangerous. I mean, I thought that was going to be dangerous for Sheffield United, who were effectively down. They just play with no fear, no worries or whatever. Didn't work out that way, obviously, because to be fair, they are quite a poor side. But yeah, let's see how that one goes. I won't ask you for predictions because it's still a fair way off, so you're getting a bit of reprieve from that one tonight. But we'll wrap up with our hot topic, our usual. End the show on a decent little debate. There's been plenty of talk this week about Roberto Firmino and his future at Liverpool, whether Liverpool should replace him and sell him. So I want to ask you first and foremost, what would you do with Roberto Firmino? Would you get rid of him or would you keep him? Mark, I'll start with you.
No, so first of all, massive fan of the player. I think he's been, it's overused really, but a great player for the club. But he's been a great player for Liverpool. In terms of his ability to receive the ball in tight areas, a real key aspect of Liverpool's team. And he's far from done in terms of thinking about moving the player on. However, that must be said, over the last year and a half, there has been a drop-off in terms of his productivity. There can't be any doubt about that. He's never been a player who's the top goal scorer in the side, but his numbers in terms of goal involvement and goals at crucial moments as well, I think the amount of good chances that he's actually squandering at key moments in games has to be a bit of a concern about for Liverpool at this moment in time. And I think, there could even be a tweak of his position if Liverpool sort of adopt a slightly different shape. I mean, I know that previously it's been the case that Liverpool have not last season, the season before, had adopted a 4-2-3-1, brought Kieran off the right hand side. Firmino could play at 10 and Salah would play up top. And I've been a bit surprised really that they haven't gone to that a bit more often, to adapt it slightly, give the opposition something slightly different to think about. And I think Salah is more than capable of playing in that number 9 role. So I think he can definitely still play for Liverpool. Don't forget that, I mean, the squad as a whole is struggling. If you were to look at Liverpool 1 to 11, you'd probably only pick a handful of players who've done themselves any justice. And obviously they're operating without the structure of the side in terms of the centre-half position. So, but yeah, he has dropped off in his level. There can be absolutely no doubt about it. But I believe he's far from done as a Liverpool player, and I think he's still got plenty to offer.
Okay, Dan, what about you? Are you keeping him, or is it time to move him on?
No, I'm definitely keeping him, but I'm also definitely bringing an out-and-out striker in because, he's never been an out-and-out striker, has he? In many ways, a lot of his best work has come, in them tight areas, and a lot of his best work has come from the other two scoring goals alongside him, which sounds strange to say, but I think maybe 3 or 4 seasons ago he hit decent numbers, and ever since has just been almost chipping in really with goals and assists, but. In fairness to him, the goals he's got, even this season have been quite important. If you look at Spurs, obviously at home, so he crops up in the big moment, but he's not an out-and-out. He's not a finisher. Forget the out-and-out striker thing. He's not a finisher. I think we all know that now. But just needs to adapt his role a little bit. I'm still quite keen to see him in behind, like either a front 3 or a front 1 with the wingers, like Mark alluded to there. And I think it's something we would have seen a bit more of if Jota had been fit for the entire season. I think, again, what Klopp probably wanted to do this season, he hasn't been allowed to do because of injuries. And I think Firmino's altered role is probably a part of that as well. Not just in terms of position, but I think he'd have been a squad player potentially a little bit more with Jota being involved in that front 3. So, yeah, moving forwards, I just think use him potentially a little bit less than we have done this season. And I do think there's scope there. I've seen people talk about him in the actual midfield, which I'm really not convinced about because although he presses quite well, he hasn't got the legs to get up and down like a Wijnaldum or a Henderson. That doesn't work for me. But in terms of behind, the front 3 or a striker, if you like, he's definitely got the the acumen and the guile to be that player, because he picks up spaces, in deep really nicely. The passing would be a concern because you think of a Coutinho and a number 10. They have this little through ball that they can play unbelievably. And Firmino often overhits or even underhits passes. So I'm not sure about that just yet. But there's definitely scope to have him in the 10 in my eyes. And with a little bit of work, obviously. But yeah, definitely not selling him, but definitely signing a striker.
Okay. Kieran?
Yeah, no, I would have to agree. I wouldn't necessarily, I want to keep him. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say we have to replace him. I'm more along the lines of bring someone in, not necessarily alongside him, but into the squad as well. Just for a couple of reasons. I mean, firstly, it's the defenders who got the injuries last season, this season, next season. I don't want to be a joke about anything. It could be the forwards. And then all of a sudden, you're struggling to get a makeshift front three out. So I think in terms of squad numbers, certainly not replace. I would rather, add to the side. Obviously the issue with that is, where do we fund it from? If we got to fund it, we'll have to take it, sell someone else. So there's obviously that. I mean, I love Bobby Firmino. He's been a fantastic servant to this club. What he's done. You put the goal involvement to the side. He's been, he's fantastic for me. Love watching, especially when he's not so much this season, but when the team's fully fit, when he's fully fit, the way he presses, his ability to nick the ball off the back four or the midfield three of the other team. I love watching it. It's just it takes a craft and a skill to do that. It's fantastic. So I'm definitely not selling. I'm definitely keeping him. But the one thing I would say is, if we were, if the club do replace him, I mean, who do we bring in? I mean, I'll probably put it out there to, I'll put it out to the lads. Who do we bring in? I'm not, because obviously there's going to be massive pressure on whoever we bring in. So, I'm not too sure who we do. I'll put it out there, lads. Is there anyone that we'd fancy, coming into the side?
I mean, for me, I think obviously there's been a lot of talk about, different number 9s. First of all, what I'd say is I don't think Klopp will be sort of ever considering selling Firmino. I think he rates him that highly. I think he will recognise that Liverpool may need something different in that final third to complement him or work alongside him, or definitely, as we say, tweak his role. But how many outstanding number 9s are there in world football? And obviously talk about going into the 90s, 2000s, some outstanding strikers in that position. It's much more the case in the modern day that it's sort of a flexible forward line, so you might get players who can play across the front three. You think about, obviously, Jota's come in. I think the interesting thing for Jota is that going to be his overall form, or is that a little bit of an anomaly? Because if you look at his career as a whole, he hasn't posted anywhere near the figures he did at Liverpool. Now, obviously, he's playing with better players, so you have to factor that in. But what I would say is it may not have to be a number 9. You might have Salah plays the 9, and then bring in another player who's a bit more creative. I mean, in the derby, it showed to me with the ball from James, Liverpool really missed that player who can, since Coutinho's left, who can find a pass between the lines and the correct weighted pass and find Liverpool's moving targets, of which they've got plenty of world-class ones in Mane and Salah. So it may be looking at a slightly different player rather than a 9, because people will talk about, Haaland, for example. They'll talk about him. I haven't seen a great deal of him, to be perfectly honest, but Liverpool in a situation where a lot of teams will be after him, excess money that will be thrown at him, it might go to the highest bidder, and also Liverpool might not be in the Champions League for next season. So I think the one player who stood out for me, and he isn't a centre forward, but I think he'd complement the forward line really well. And then, as I say, a different player could go as the 9, or Firmino could stay there, is actually a player like Jack Grealish. I think he's been absolutely fantastic for Villa. And again, it'd be massive money to try and get him on board. But I think with a more creative player, actually the players that Liverpool have at this moment in time, it might suit them better. And for that reason, they may tend to operate better if they had a better supply line or a bit more craft and creativity. So that's the kind of player I might look at, because I don't think there's that many great number 9s in world football at the moment.
That's an interesting one. Dan, who'd you go for if you have to bring someone in? Would you go with Mark and a creative sense, or are you looking for an out-and-out goal scorer?
Yeah, I think I want the goal scorer at this point. And Haaland. it's pie in the sky if we're dead honest, because we might not have Champions League football, we might not have the money, and I don't think he's going to go this summer anyway. They've got a release clause that starts next summer, so the chances are he'll go then. I think, but he would be the one without a shadow of a doubt. There's other names like Liverpool historically, certainly under this ownership, haven't bought the elite, ready to go player. Probably only Alisson really, was at the top of his profession when we signed him. Even Van Dijk, he wasn't the player we expected. He turned into an absolute phenomenon, obviously. But signing from Southampton, we all thought he was good, but no one thought he was what he proved to be. And the same with Jota in many ways. Like Mark touched upon, he wasn't fantastic for Wolves, but he was bloody brilliant at the start of the season. But yeah, I think the creative argument's an interesting one. I'd like to see us to sign one of them as well. In an ideal world, to be honest. Someone like a Neto, maybe. I know he is similar to Jota, but I really like Pedro Neto at Wolves. But I've got to say, I think we might be talking about replacing the wrong striker, because I think Origi goes. And to replace him, I'm available in the summer, so I could do it. But on a more serious note, like, we've got to replace Origi, haven't we? As much as I think he scored 1 goal all season in all competitions, so replacing that isn't necessarily hard. And I do love him for what he's done for us in the past, but we need a striker, don't we, sat on the bench, because you've seen our bench at times this season. Obviously, the Minamino one's up in the air still. I think Shaqiri goes in the summer, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I think Origi definitely goes, like I say. So we do need to sign an out-and-out striker, because Origi is the only one we've got, and he's nowhere near the level. So I could throw some names. There's a kid called Patson Daka at Salzburg who scored a lot of goals. So there's names out there, and Liverpool have got this track record now of finding almost unknown players and them turning out to be very good. Like Salah wasn't unknown, but he wasn't very good when we signed him, let's be honest. And now look what's happened. So if we signed someone who nobody really knew, it wouldn't worry me. If we signed Haaland, that would be amazing. But at the same time, we just got to let the recruitment team run with it at this stage, I think.
Yeah, as you say, the track record kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it? And Michael Edwards has been fantastic. But I am going to give him a bit of advice right now. I personally think, let's be honest, we've missed the boat on Origi. He should have gone after the Champions League final for me. So we're probably going to get maybe 20 million. You sell Shaqiri, maybe you get 20 million. Whatever you get, you just offer it to Southampton and get Danny Ings back. So you can have Minamino, you can have him. Danny Ings plays, because to be honest, right, Ings was a big part of Klopp's squad at the start. Well, he was gonna be, and then he got injured, and then he came back, and Klopp loved him because he was just constantly, he's a pressing machine, isn't he? He just loves it. He works hard and he scores goals, and he's ripped it up at Southampton. For me, I'd love to see him come back to Liverpool. And he's probably a bit more realistic than going out and getting Haaland, especially this summer, as you say, with the release clause. I do think Firmino's time as a number 9 is done, and the model that FSG have built, he's probably time to go. I like him. I think he's a good player. I didn't at the start. I didn't rate him when he first started, but then he just blew me away. But I don't know. I think FSG look to move people on, don't they, when they get to a certain age, and I think we need to add a bit of new life in the squad, basically, and I think he could be one that gets moved on. But the summer's going to be very interesting, isn't it? Kieran, you didn't tell us who you'd go for.
I don't really have too many names around, because I think it'll be obviously massive pressure if we bring someone in. I do think if we do bring someone in, it'll be from somewhere that Klopp knows, i.e. the Bundesliga. So I would be talking about Haaland, but it'd probably more likely be, I can't even pull any names. It'll be, he'll pick a young forward for, I don't know, a Frankfurt or a Union Berlin or something who are doing okay this season. Or he'll go for someone from the Premier League. I mean, you touched on Danny Ings there. I'd love to see Danny Ings back. I love what he does. Proper goal scorer. Presses for his life. Exactly what we need. Apart from that, you look at who else would you go for, really? I mean, especially from the Premier League, it's going to, whatever price you've got in mind, you can put, I don't know, another 10, 20 million on top of it. So, I'm only just throwing names out there like Antonio, Bamford, that sort of thing. But I mean, yeah, I don't really have a name, but I'm sure obviously we back the recruitment process. We back Michael Edwards. they'll be discussing their plans. They'll have your plans A, B, C, D, whatever. So I've definitely backed them for whatever they do. But I wouldn't know really what name to put out there, to be honest.
I think the big thing is you're saying there about obviously being in the Premier League, add another 10, 20 million. It might not be the case this summer. Everybody is in trouble financially in some way. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how the summer starts because everyone wants to sell before they buy. And it's only really maybe City, Paris Saint-Germain who are going to actually spend some money, and that might then kickstart something. But it'll be interesting to see. I'm going to throw a name out there because there's a club who are in serious trouble in Inter Milan. Would anybody take Lukaku?
Great goal scorer.
Yeah.
Great goal scorer. I mean, his numbers speak for themselves. I think, people have talked throughout the years that there may be deficiencies in his all-round game. But if you add as much of the ball as Liverpool do, as much territorial domination, Lukaku's going to score goals. And I think he's a massively underrated player in that aspect. I think he's, his goals to game ratio, wherever he's been, it's been outstanding, really. And it's certainly, we'll put it this way, if he was playing for Liverpool this season, Liverpool would have a lot more goals, and I suggest they'd have a lot more points as well.
Yeah. On the cheap, Dan, would you take him? By cheap, I obviously mean about, 40, 50, 60 million on the cheap.
You know what? No, but I agree with everything Mark's just said, and I really like him. I just think, for the way we play, I just don't see it. I think we'd have to change too much, if I'm honest. Whereas, you look at the likes of Haaland, he's a big physical player, but he's also absolutely rapid and he gets about. And I haven't seen a massive amount of Lukaku since he's gone to Italy because I'm not a massive fan of Serie A, if I'm dead honest. But what I remember, although his touch was never that bad, his finishing's phenomenal and his goal record is also extraordinary. But I'm just not sure he'd get about like we'd need him to. That high pressing game, I don't foresee it happening with him. So that would be a no for me, to be honest.
Although I'm saying, what a fantastic career he's had, I don't think it's realistic that Liverpool would go for that kind of player. But he's certainly a player who, it's the same with your likes of, in a different way, the likes of Grealish. I mean, I think Grealish is fantastic, but is it realistic for Liverpool to have the kind of money to spend on him? Not really. So it's almost as if we're throwing names out that I suppose are never going to come to fruition, sort of thing. And Lukaku's another one, but I do rate him as a goal scorer. I mean, he's got a fantastic goal scoring record, and so. One of Liverpool's biggest problems this season has been converting opportunities. So, although it's never going to happen, he's the kind of player, if we maybe found a different player who ran about a bit more and, was a bit better off the ball and was a bit more malleable in terms of being a young player you can sort of mould, then yeah, maybe.
I just think because, Inter Milan are in such serious
financial
trouble, they're going to have to move somebody on, and Conte's going to get a cob on and he's going to move on himself probably. So I just think, you could potentially get him on the cheap.
They've got Martinez, haven't they, as well?
What'd you say, mate?
Lautaro Martinez, Inter Milan.
Yeah, so he's another one. Would you have him?
Yeah. He's 23, a lot more mobile, and his goal-scoring record is also fantastic. So I'd take him like a shot. If they're struggling financially, then yeah, definitely offer them Divock Origi and £1 million for him.
Oh, God.
I think we're going to have to pay someone to take Origi off us at this stage, to be honest with you.
I love him. Let's not be too unfair.
Kieran,
He's
on
done
Lukaku
well.
and Martinez, mate.
So I was just looking. Do you know what it was? I was just looking. Southampton nearly scored.
I know.
So.
Again, for me, Lukaku. I just don't think he'd be the right fit for our, the way we play. And obviously we need a goal scorer. It's crying out for it. And the numbers he puts up, there is that argument. It's not the sort of player we go for. I don't think it's, necessarily the type of player that fit into the system. So the Lukaku this is. So don't know too much about Martinez again. Not a big fan of Italian football, to be honest. So, I'd rather you speak about him on that one than me. But yeah, it's unrealistic, and I'd still have reservations about Lukaku. Yeah, so it'd be a no for me on him.
Okay, fair enough. lads, that brings us to the end. Well, my dog's just having a bit of a dream here. Don't know whether you can hear him woofing away in his sleep. I've told him to shut up twice, but he's still going. Thank you very much for your time, as ever. Mark, a solid debut. I don't know where we'll rank you between sort of a Dirk Kuyt or an Igor Biscan. We'll rank you somewhere. That's a future question, by the way, future hot topic. I've just come up with the best debuts and worst debuts. Joe Cole's got to be up there for one of the worst. Anyway, save that for another day. Dan and Kieran, thank you very much as ever. A pleasure as always.
Cheers, mate.
We will be back Sunday night. Liverpool play 2 o'clock on next Sunday against Fulham. So we'll be back Sunday night, roughly 7, 8 o'clock-ish. And we'll see you all then. Thanks very much for watching.
See you, everyone.